You are about to experience Jackson Snyder Presents. We will examine the life of our Master Yeshua by discovering his ancestors, family, and friends, by reviewing rare ancient manuscripts, and speaking to those who know him best. From the Vero Essene Yahad, now experience Jackson Snyder Presents.
Good evening. I think that they found Noah's Ark. Now, I know a lot of people say they have, but we have a group of scientists that are 99.9% sure that they found the genuine Ark and that it landed on the top of a mountain and then sometime later slid down to another position. And if I'm not mistaken, that was a team sent out by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Then another team said that they also found the Ark in a little different place, but I've collected a few articles about it and even some poems. So I thought I would try Noah's Ark. Though it's still inaccessible, it looks like somebody is going to get to it pretty soon. And the second example I mentioned, they were in the Ark they found. But I'll let the articles speak for themselves. And don't eliminate the possibility that there were two Arks. But let's start with the best and worst nail in the Ark, a cute poem by Arthur Gitterman.
The Best and Worst Nail in the Ark by Arthur Gitterman, 1871 to 1943. Now, this is the story, and all of ye hark, of what was the best and worst nail in the Ark. When Noah was building this Ark, as you know, a rumble of thunder surprised him, and so, to have the boat ready in time for the rain, he took on a rite of the children of Cain. A terrible sinner, like all of the rest, and still, as a carpenter, one of the best. This person was hammering hard at the stem when up strolls the patriarch, Japheth and Shem. And what does that impudent carpenter do? But ask to be taken as one of the crew. Says he, I am wishful to sail in your boat, along with your elephant, camel, and goat. But Noah, he answers him, none of your jokes. You'll stay in the wet with the rest of your folks. The carpenter grinned, and the carpenter laughed. He watched till the party was all of them aft, then screwed up one eyebrow and twisted his lip and pulled a big nail from the bow of the ship. He pulled out the nail, did that offspring of sin, which left a fine hole for the tide to creep in. Now up comes the animals marching in pairs, and with them the devil sneaks in unawares. They say with the mule, for she hadn't a mate, and hides in the hold with the rest of the freight. But whist, when the waters were boiling around and rocking the Ark from her place on the ground, old Noah stood up while the elements roared, and asked a strong blessing on all things aboard. Now blessings, for cause I needn't explain, are what the old devil can't hear without pain. And so the poor devil tore wildly about, prospecting in vain for a place to get out, when what should he spy, when of reason bereft, but that one fine hole that the carpenter left. He altered his form to the shape of a worm, and right through that nail hole he tried for to squirm. But talk as they do of the devil's own luck, as tight as a rivet the poor devil stuck. He stuck and he stayed for the whole of the trip, excluding the wet from the hold of the ship. The waters might heave and the waters might roll, but still the poor devil kept plugging that hole, and saving them all from the wave and the shark. So he was the best and worst nail in the ark.
Evidence that Noah's Ark landed on a mountain 17 miles south of Ararat. An illogical and unwarranted assumption prevails today relating to the landing spot of Noah's Ark. People, highly educated people, are sure that Noah's Ark landed on the remote and inaccessible heights of Mount Ararat, a 17,000-foot volcanic mountain in modern-day Turkey. The book of Genesis doesn't say that the Ark landed on Mount Ararat, but rather on the mountains of Ararat in Genesis 8:4, meaning on a mountain somewhere within the range. Think about it. If you were Noah, would you land a huge craft full of animals, tools, and supplies near the top of the highest, craggiest peak in the mountain chain? Why would you land your ship and everything you brought from the pre-flood world in an extremely precarious location? Wouldn't you want to live in the ark until you made suitable habitations nearby? Wouldn't you want to use the ark wood to build those habitations and to make fire? In Noah's Ark, the evidence, the Bible, the flood, Gilgamesh, and the mother goddess origins, the late David Allen Deal presented a common sense, convincing argument that Noah's Ark landed on an 8,000-foot mountain 17 miles south of Mount Ararat based on his visits to the site and fact after fact. As a friend and truth-seeking associate, David helped me formulate the content of my books, Noah in Ancient Greek Art and Genesis Characters and Events in Ancient Greek Art. I dedicate this article to his memory and summarize here just some of the surprising evidence he uncovered about the true landing site of Noah's Ark. The ark first came to rest on the mountain south of Ararat in a welcoming and accessible spot at an elevation of 7,000 feet, supposed location indicated by several illustrations that you can find on the internet. I wish I could show you one here, but I can't. The hull of the ark provided basic raw materials for the occupants of the first post-flood city, Misha Naksuan. They stripped its planks and beams to build roofs and used the melted down kapar, or bitumen, that is tar, to seal the roofs from rain. They most likely used the wood for furnishings as well as for fires, and there was a lot of wood there. When the ark slid downhill after an earthquake, and rains provided the impetus, perhaps after 100 years, the Mesha Naksuan lumber yard moved a mile across the mountain and 1,200 feet lower. Two ark impressions remain on the mountain, one where it landed and the other where it descended to the lower elevation. Evidence on site indicates that the ark slid down the mountain, away from Mesha Naksuan, after about 1,000 dwellings had been built there. Now, Mesha, M-E-S-H-A, means to be drawn out of the water, the name most likely given to it by Noah. Naksuan is a Greek interpretation for the Hebrew Noach Zion, or Noah's Zion, or Noah's capital, a name given to the city by later generations. Mesha is a variation of Moshe, meaning saved through water, as Moses was saved from the Nile. In the ancient epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh, who we suppose is Nimrod or Heracles, traveled to the mountains of Mashu to find Upnashatim, who was Noah, or Nereus in their understanding, the man who had brought the humanity through the flood. Gilgamesh means the man who revealed Mesha. Genesis 10:21 refers to Noach's son, Shem, as the forefather of all the sons of Eber. They were said to dwell towards Sephar, a mountain of the east, having come from Mesha. Genesis 10:30. The traditional Kurdish names for the mountain today are Masher Dag and Masher Dag, meaning respectfully Doomsday Mountain and Resurrection Mountain. In Shemitic, the place where Noah dwelled was also called Dilmun, which means the abode of the dangling or dried up. a fitting epithet for those left high and dry on the mountain after the worldwide flood. Both names, Mesha and Dilmun, attest to Noah's salvation from the flood at this location. The Epic of Gilgamesh refers to the wall of heaven, or the wall of the sky, or sky wall, on Mount Mesha. You can see that wall in the form of escarpment cliffs in many photos that you can find on the web and David Deal's own drawing. Check out David Deal on the web and you'll see the picture. Mesha Naxawan was the very first city of our post-flood civilization, built by Noah and his sons and their sons from materials scavenged from the ark, long lost to the world but mentioned in many historical accounts. In a footnote in Josephus' Antiquities, translator William Whiston says that Noah's landing and dwelling spot was called Naxuan, the place of the first descent. Here he quoted Armenian historian Moses of Chronesis. This phrase, place of first descent, implies a second descent, and that's exactly what the evidence on the mountain itself is telling us. The city of Mesha Naxuan was the first city built by the flood survivors and their descendants. Then, from an earthquake and rain, the ark slid down 1,200 feet to its second and final resting place, leaving what's now a 1-acre, elliptical, 538-foot-long ship's hull impression at 6,200 feet. Most or all of Noah's offspring abandoned Mesha Naxuan and built a new settlement where the ark came to rest. This second town, built after the flood, was originally called Saran because of the Zar, or sharp outcropping that penetrated and arrested the downhill slide of the ark hull remain. The Sar part, in Saron or Tsar, remained in the later place name, Nisar or Nisar and Nasar, and the Babylonians referred to the town as Nisar. While mounted adventurers still climb Ararat, David Deal and a small, unconnected group of other explorers begin to realize the implication of this site at Mashur Dag. Having seen the evidence for what it is, the ark mold impression is compelling as a standalone feature. The remnants of many ancient habitations discovered by Deal in the 1996-97 journey at the upper landing site, that is Mesha Naxuan, and the Wall of Heaven, written of in the Epic of Gilgamesh, convincingly add to the evidence. Furthermore, the connected meanings of the various place names on the mountain provide us with unifying clarity. As the entire mountain location is now becoming known and understood, it's impossible to conceive of the ark landing anywhere else, especially on a massive volcano. David Deal's discovery relates directly to the depiction of a key but relatively unrecognized Genesis woman in ancient art. In the early post-flood world, the ancients revered Nama, the last woman mentioned in the line of Cain, from Genesis 4:22, who came through the flood as Ham's wife, and who then instigated the abandonment of Elohim and the return to the serpent's enlightenment and the exaltation of man as the measure of all things. Archaeological remains include statues of the deified wife of Ham, the Canaanite princess Nama from Genesis 4:22, identifying her with the mountain upon which she landed in the ark. In these ancient images, she wears a mountain on her head, and her special dress is flounced and tiered, representing sections of the escarpment on the mountain. In some, Nama's image holds the staff of the two-headed serpent, symbolizing the serpent's rule before the flood, and now, because of her Canaanite dedication, the serpent's rule resumed in the post-flood world, according to that ancient thought. A most revealing 782-page book by thorough and brilliant secular scholars Anne Baring and Jules Cashford, called The Myth of the Goddess, traces almost all of the goddesses of the ancient Near Eastern and Mediterranean world back to a single figure, the Sumerian Namu, a minor linguistic variation of Nama. I would retitle their book The Memory of the Adored Woman, because that's what it's really all about. After Elohim confounded the one language into many at the Tower of Babel, mankind adored Nama by many titles, including Lama, Astarte, Ishtar, Hathor, Isis, Ma'at, Artemis, Inanna, Asherah, and ultimately in her most glorious idolization as the great Greek goddess Athena. And I might say today this carries right on with the worship of not only the Asherah, yes, is still going, but also the worship of Mary and other such great goddess types of deities that we understand as either not existing at all or still being a reason for the separation of humankind with the Creator, Yahweh Elohim. Now we can see that the many ancient goddesses in the post-flood world didn't spring from human imaginations or from the head of Zeus, or materialize out of nowhere, but rather link directly back to the Canaanite woman who came down from the mountain where Noah's Ark came to rest, 17 miles south of Ararat. And this article came from Robert Bowie Johnson Jr., who wrote The Parthenon Code, Mankind's History in Marble, who is an expert in Greek art. His latest book, it's a little exciting here, is The Full Color Genesis Characters and Events in Ancient Greek Art. I can see a little bit of it right here, and it looks like it's gloriously illustrated. You can find it at www.genesisingreekart.com. Robert Bowie Johnson Jr. Is this the final resting place of Noah? It's certainly one of the contenders. The tale about a huge ship of biblical proportions that enabled the survival of all the species of animals around the world sounds impressive, but also quite unbelievable. Nonetheless, its builder, Noah, is one of the most popular biblical figures. Furthermore, he's an important prophet in Islam, although his story, perhaps inspired by the Epic of Gilgamesh, or the Epic of Gilgamesh inspired by Noah's Ark from the Scripture, it has existed for thousands of years and is known by billions of people. But the place of Noah's burial remains unknown. Around the world, people in their first years of life learn the story of a man who saved many people and animal species from death under the waters that came with a horrible flood. The Ark story, known since ancient times, became so popular that it's a world-famous myth known in most of the cultures long before its iteration as part of the Bible. However, most of the stories related to Noah are nothing more than oral history or fantasies. Actually, we go to the text in Genesis and we find 2 stories of Noah's Ark, with details of each interspersed throughout the passages. At first glance, you might think that there is a very obvious contradiction, but if we remember that 2 people retold this, and the final editor interspersed the 2 together, then we don't have a problem with it. Apart from the biblical notes and the information that comes from other descriptions of a similar flood, no information can provide identifying personal data about Noah. Religious people believe that Noah lived for 950 years. I guess this means I'm a religious person because I believe he did. It's confirmed by the Bible. According to the book of Genesis, "And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be Yahweh Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Sadly, there's no historical source apart from religious texts, which confirms this data from the biography of Noah. Moreover, through the ages, dozens of researchers, some more, some less professional, have tried to prove their own ideas about the possible biography of this legendary man. One of the most credible pieces of research was accomplished by the team led by Robert D. Ballard. His goal was to explain the biblical flood in scientific ways. The most famous story says that the famous Ark ended its voyage on the slopes of Mount Ararat, now in eastern Turkey, but for a very long time in Armenia. The importance of this claim is based on religious issues, as Islam dominates Turkey and Armenia and has always been related to Christianity. Furthermore, one of the possible tombs of Noah is located in territory contested by Armenia and Azerbaijan. The mausoleum, located in Nakhchivan, is located on the land known as Konagala, meaning Old Fortress. Many Armenians believe that this is traditionally their territory, but currently it officially belongs to Azerbaijan. The construction was built around the 8th century, that is AD, but could possibly be a little younger. It was rebuilt many times, and now the main building contains the remnants of the former one. Inside the burial chamber, there is a column, and according to the explanations presented by guides, this is the place where the relic of Noah was buried. Thus, it seems that even the locals don't see the mausoleum as the original burial place of Noah, just a temple for a relic deposit. The Imam Ali Mosque in Najaf, Iraq, is a destination for the pilgrimage of millions of people every year. The average number of pilgrims is about 8 million people. It's a holy site for Muslims who follow the Shia belief, the ones who accept that Muhammad had an ancestor, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The followers of this faith believe that Ali was buried next to the legendary Adam and Noah. There's also a folklore story in the city of Kizra in Turkey and Karaknu in Lebanon. The tradition from Kizra claims that it was the original burial place of Noah and his family. However, neither the Iraqi or Turkish theory can be confirmed. In the case of Lebanon, it's commonly said that it was the relics that were buried in this place. The story about the tomb of Noah is full of mysteries. Although religious circles believe that they know the real burial place of the legendary sailor, the number of possible grave locations creates doubt in the story. Apart from the stories from the Middle East and other Muslim countries, there's one more legendary location to add to the confusion. In northwest Spain and Galicia, there's a town named Noia. Its name comes from the biblical Noah, and the coat of arms of the town has the image of the famous Ark. Although historians speak with one voice that the legend has no credit in resources, the story stays popular among those of the local culture. This particular article was by Natalia Klimzak. Doesn't tell us too much. Primarily tells us that there are several different places that claim the fame of Noah's mausoleum, but we'll probably never know for sure. And now, my friends, let me remind you that you can get Vero Essene Yahad programs several times a week over the internet and live. Yes, these are live broadcasts in which you can chime in with your questions, comments, or criticisms. Here's the schedule. All times are Eastern Time. Tuesday evening, 9 p.m. I am there with you. Friday evening, 9 p.m. You are there with me. And on Shabbat, we have a short liturgical Shabbat service at 11 a.m. featuring the Nazarene Essene liturgy, the Shema, and a different speaker every week. That service is usually about 45 minutes. And then on Shabbat at 3:33 p.m., we have the 333 Club. Again, meet up with me there. Let's dialogue. All you must do is go on your PC, surfing to www.theyahad.com at those times, and we shall be there for you. Let me now inform you of something new. We have a new interactive program on the internet once every 2 weeks right now. It's called the Yahad Sacred Feminine. You heard me right, Sacred Feminine. It's just for women. No men allowed. With ordained pastoral counselors there as well, but mainly just a place for women to talk about their problems, their triumphs, their experiences in the Holy Spirit. For more information, contact me, Jackson Snyder, at veryahad@gmail.com. Hey, I'm not even allowed to go. And if you are on Android, first of all, I pity you. Second of all, you can get us too at those times. Check our website, veryahad.org, for more information, telephone numbers, and links. See you soon. Here's some evidence of the Great Flood. Is it real or a myth? The story of a great flood sent by Elohim, or, according to other testimony, by gods, to destroy humanity for its sin, is a widespread account shared by many religions and cultures around the world, and dates back to our earliest recorded history. From India to ancient Greece, Mesopotamia, and even among North American Indian tribes, there's no shortage of such tales that often enough sound very much alike. Some of these stories truly sound so similar that one could wonder whether all cultures around the planet had experienced such an event. Can it be that all flood accounts so zealously repeated around the world are a collection of myths or isolated incidents, as the mainstream academia maintains? Or was the Great Flood a single worldwide cataclysm that affected all humanity at one point during our prehistory? While small, isolated disasters can stress and frighten affected populations equally, their overall effect is short-lived, and they often fade from memory within decades, if not years. In the case of the Great Flood, however, we have a story that seems to have no boundaries, and one that every culture insists on its worldwide nature. How big and how destructive, though, must have been such a disaster that it managed to sear itself into our ancestors' collective memory for thousands of years? Judging by the shared testimony, this must not only have been an event that affected everyone simultaneously, but in order for it to become a permanent fixture in human psyche, it must have been an experience that persisted not only for days or months, but for several generations. If not an isolated incident, though, what known worldwide catastrophe qualifies to be called the Great Flood? Without a doubt, the significant rise of the oceans, a worldwide disaster that at the end of the last ice age erased millions of square miles of dry land around the planet, must have been the doomsday event every culture to this day inadvertently is talking about. More particularly, it was the abrupt rise of the oceans around 8000 BC that ultimately led to the flooding of the Mediterranean first and finally to the flooding of the Black Sea. Although in 1997, William Ryan and Walter Pittman suggested that the flood of the Black Sea took place around 5600 BC, a later study in 2005, sponsored by UNESCO, confirmed that the incident took place much earlier time and much closer to 8000 BC. The rise of the oceans was that single, long-lasting event that dramatically reshaped the coastlines of our planet, and the one which simultaneously affected every coastal civilization around the world at the time. Even when, at first look, the gradual rise of the ocean doesn't seem to meet the criteria as the event behind the legend of the Great Flood, an incident responsible for the sea level to rise globally by more than 400 feet surely had many random episodes when the flooding was absolutely unpredictable. When considering that humans, by nature, tend to settle in lower elevations and near water, it leaves no doubt that all prehistoric civilizations were totally devastated by the event. A recent study published in Science News December 4, 2010, titled Global Sea Level Rise at the End of the Last Ice Age, Interrupted by Rapid Jumps. That's a long title. It better explains that after the end of the last ice age, around 17,000 BC through 4,000 BC, sea levels on average rose by 1 meter per century. However, the study also indicated that this gradual rise of the seas was marked by abrupt jumps of sea level at the rate of about 5 meters per century. More precisely, the study showed that the periods between 13,000 and 11,000 BC, as well as between 9,000 BC and 7,000, were characterized by abnormal sea level rises. When studying closer the abrupt climatic changes during the last 18,000 years, the time between 9,000 and 7,000 BC is of particular interest. As the glaciers begin to melt over thousands of years prior to this period, and the temperatures progressively begin to increase with each passing century, thus causing the melting process to accelerate, we can easily presume that this must have been the most active period in sea level rise. More accurately, the absolute worst period must have been around 8,000 BC, and the critical flood cycle that preceded the flooding of the Black Sea, which really marked the end of this violent period. In fact, if past periodic ice ages and floods didn't manage previously to add salinity in the fresh water of the Black Sea, then undoubtedly the last global flood around 8,000 BC must have been the greatest flood of all time. Around this period, in addition to all the glacier meltwater that heavily flowed into the Atlantic, 2 enormous glacial lakes in North America burst open. First, Lake Agassiz, and later Lake Obijwe, and begin to drain into the northern Atlantic. Agassiz alone, covering an area larger than all the modern Great Lakes combined, that is 440,000 square kilometers. At times it contained more water than all the lakes in the world today. It's estimated that the outburst flood caused by the collapse of Lake Agassiz alone may have been responsible for sea levels to rise globally by as much as 9 feet. The total freshwater outflow from both lakes was so immense that not only quickly raised the sea levels worldwide by several feet, but this incident may have ultimately caused the 8.2 kilo year event, so-called, that followed approximately 8,200 years ago, a mini ice age that lasted up to 4 centuries. Now, this lake evidently doesn't exist anymore, but if we plot it on a map, it really looks like Cuba and situated between Hudson's Bay and the Great Lakes. Obviously, from the map, this thing contained a lot of water, much more than the Great Lakes or perhaps even the Hudson Bay. It was during this time when most coastal civilizations around the planet were lost. The continuous rapid rise of the sea during this period by an average of 6 to 9 meters per century or more, along with the adverse climatic changes that accompanied this phenomenon, made it impossible for the remnants of any civilization to reestablish itself. Only after 7,000 BC, when the ocean levels finally began stabilizing, human life once more began to return to normal. Coastal sites no longer had to be abandoned for higher ground, or at least for the most part, and between 6,000 BC and 5,000 BC, once more, we began to see signs of human activity closer to the sea. Is it a mere coincidence that our recorded history happens to start around this same time? Is it true that early humans were too primitive to leave traces of their existence behind? Or the early pages of our history were washed away by the great flood of the last ice age? After all, it seems that as soon as the adverse climactic conditions receded, it didn't take long for humans to thrive once again. That little article was by Christos A. Jonis, who authored the book Ukrainia, Atlantis Revealed. And there's a part 2 to this, but it's not in extent yet. But that really gives us a good time frame and a good evidence of an historical event.
Does new evidence prove the Noah's Ark is buried on a Turkish mountain? Conclusive evidence of the existence of Noah's Ark has eluded Ark hunters since time immemorial. The Bible says the vessel made landfall on the mountains of Ararat in Turkey after 150 days in the water. A group of explorers affiliated with NAMI, a Hong Kong-based evangelical Christian group, said in 2010 that on Mount Ararat, Turkey, they had found traces of the ancient ship. Their claims, however, met with a stiff challenge from the broader scientific community. But a California-based Ark hunter now believes there is evidence that the vessel and its occupants did indeed come aground on Mount Ararat, so reported the Daily Mail. Professor Raul Esprante of the Geoscience Research Institute was one of 108 scientists from around the world, speaking at the 3-day International Symposium of Mount Ararat and Noah's Ark in Agri, Turkey, which looked at evidence for the biblical vessel's final resting place. Esprante says, "My purpose is to visit the sites around the mountain to find clues about catastrophic events in the past." The Geoscience Research Institute is sponsored by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Many of the organization's assertions have similarly been met with resistance by the scientific community. In April 2010, archaeologists from NAMI reported that they found an ark that they believed had a 99.9% chance of being the ancient biblical artifact known as Noah's Ark, so reported the Epoch Times. The team of 15 researchers who were searching in East Turkey claimed to have found the Ark on Mount Ararat, 13,000 feet above sea level. One of the team members, documentary filmmaker Wing Chung Yung, said, "It's not 100% that it is Noah's Ark, but we think it is 99.9% that it is." That is reported by World Net Daily. It seems the inside of the Ark was equipped with several compartments that the group said could have been used to house animals, while skeptics said they could have been just as easily used to carry weapons or food or slaves. Here's a quote from one of the NAMI workers, Man Fei Yuan. You say, "The search team and I personally entered a wooden structure high on the mountain. The structure is partitioned into different spaces. We believe that the wooden structure we entered is the same structure recorded in historical accounts and the same ancient boat indicated by the locals." The team claimed they performed carbon dating tests on the wood and said it was 4,800 years old. If true, this would date it at approximately the time the vessel is said to have been afloat. Yes, that would be 2800 BC, and indeed, that would be close to the biblical time of Ark. Esprante is convinced of the accuracy of the NAMI team's findings. He urges more rigorous, serious scientific work to support the claims with further empirical proof, wrote the Daily Mail. He also wants to team up with local scientists on the project. He said, "We have technical resources and we can work together with local experts. Once the scientific community knows about the existence of Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat, we can make it available to the general public." But Nicholas Purcell of Oxford... Oh, Kitty? Is that you, Kitty? But Nicholas Purcell of Oxford University calls into question claims that the Ark is located on Mount Ararat. He say, if floodwaters covered Eurasia 12,000 feet deep in 2800 BC, how did the complex societies of Egypt and Mesopotamia, already many centuries old, keep right on regardless? Good question, I'd say. Oh, here is Kitty again. Kitty, 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 kitty. Let me rub your little head. Oh, oh, oh. Now, Kitty, you're out of here. The legend of Noah's Ark originates from the 6th chapter of the book of Genesis. The story goes that Noah was instructed by Elohim to build an ark carrying a male and female of each animal in the region in which Noah lived. By constructing the ark, Noah saved the animals and a small group of people from a great flood summoned to do away with the morally depraved. And that looks like end of this little article.
The Prophecy of Noah by William B. Tappan, 1794 to 1849. Oh, the billows no more on the mountaintop slept, no longer a world in its agony wept. With his waves had abated the wrath of the Lord, and the rainbow looked out, where of late gleamed the sword. Of the thousands that scoffed, was there none to tell now how mighty his vengeance when kindled his brow? And gay in the restless, in those vexed with cares, the young in their wine cups, the man of gray hairs, the noble in greatness, the maiden in pride, alike met the besom. They slept neath the tide. The patriarch lingered on Ararat still. The light of Jehovah yet waved on that hill. And dear to his heart in that wilderness world was the cloud of rich mercy that over him curled. And in vision he spake, while his hallowed power woke the soul of the seer in prophecy's hour. A deed of the night, Ham, was known unto thee, and Canaan subdued to his brethren shall be. For Ham is poured out the red vial of wrath, or the portion of Canaan hath passed the fell scath. On the shores of the Ethiop is gathered the flood. Come not on my sight, O ye visions of blood. Why floats on mine ear the harrowing cry? With the crime-tainted breeze, why mingles the sigh? 'Tis the groan of the captive, the shriek of the slave. Ah, he lays down his fetters and stripes in the grave. To the land of the south speeds the merciless bark. 'Tis not, O my God, thy delivering ark. It comes from the white Christian trafficker's dime, and the cross of the innocent wavers o'er crime. That banner floats high on the death-scented gale. From that sepulchre bark comes the prisoner's wail. The cowardly taunt is that African's food. His tears are for thirst, and his ailment blood. Recollections of home with its treasures pass o'er him. The long lingering watches of grief are before him. Madly he rushes to where the dark billow yields to the wretched its cold, dreamless pillow. He sinks, and immortal forever hath flown, to wander away from the light of the throne. God, on me and on mine thou hast scattered thy dew. Let thy rainbow of love beam on Africa too. Look afar, my firstborn, to the regions that lie luxuriant and fair, neath the young eastern sky, whose rivers roll onward their silvery flood, through vales that are lovely as gardens of God. The birthplace of blessings, uncounted and free, the land of rich promise I give unto thee, for possession to thee and thy children, to them, an inheritance worthy the offspring of Shem. Yet not for the plains where fertility teems in abundance, surpassing the husbandman's dreams. Nor yet for the valley, or cedar-clad mountain, or streams that gush out from many a fountain, or rivers that water the wide plain of palms. Not for these, O my son, of decay are these charms. Do I bless yon possessions? For now to mine eye the dim flood of ages rolls fearfully by. I see a deliverer beneath Syrian skies. I behold offered up the one sacrifice. Lo, blessings poured out from obscure Galilee in floods shall all nations enrich, yea, I see kings, warriors, and people of languages far bow down to his scepter who rides by name Yah. Hasten thou, day of wonder, break out holy morn, when the uncreate Godhead, a babe shall be born. God shall bless and enlarge thee, O Japheth, and thou a while shalt repose beneath Shem's fruitful bough. To thee and to thine the portion shall be of land stretching far to the uttermost sea, beyond the tall mountains, whose proudest cleft sees his base idly washed by the blue Euphrates. And there the sun on the waves' yielding breast descends in the eve of his glory to rest. Regions well favored, my son, shall be thine. Hail, shores of the blest, where beneath his own vine each one shall repose. Hail, land of the free. And tell me, my spirit, what more wouldst thou see? Why opens to vision the vista of years? Ah, why to be one robed clay vestment appears? Fruition of blessing to men yet unknown? Surely the light that waves around thee is caught from the throne. The cloud big with mercies already is o'er thee. A world disenthralled and redeemed is before thee. Arise, O my spirit, and seest the birth of glories surviving this heaven and earth.
What the Devil Said to Noah by Arthur Gitterman, 1871 to 1943. The world was badly scared. The very heavens trembled. The ark was all prepared. The beasts were all assembled, and driven safe within by Noah's sons and daughters, when lo, the Lord of sin appeared upon the waters. A gallant privateer, he sailed a Malay proa. I think it's going to clear, the devil said to Noah. We know that things are wrong. We strive to make them better. Perhaps I write a song. Perhaps you write a letter. Perhaps we work like men to push a worthy movement. When up he pops again, that foe to all improvement. And smiling on the deer, but winking at the boa. Oh, shucks, it's going to clear, the devil coos to Noah.
A place where my heart was a little white stone. On the stone we was a new name written. None could read it, but didn't receive it. I didn't receive it, and I didn't read it. Just let me tell you what the little stone said. I've been reading, I've been washing the blood of the Lamb. Tell me who beauties are. Tell me who beauties are. Tell me who beauty are. Tell me. A rain for the day, for the night, stopping. Nora was glad when the rain stopped dripping. They knocked on the window, they knocked on the door. I asked Nora, can he take any more? Nora cried out, I'm sorry, my friend. God got the key, and you can't get in. Tell me who beauty are. Tell me who beauties are. Tell me who beauty are. Tell me. A great God Almighty comforted my soul. A place where my heart was a little white. me tell you what the little song said.
You've been listening to Jackson Snyder Presents, produced by the Vero Essin Yahad, a Hebrew Nation original. Thank you for listening with us. We'll be on again tomorrow night, same time, same place. And in the meantime,
Get yourself a glass of wine, a little cheese, and a morsel of bread, and say a prayer for me too, Brother Shroomkoff.
Rain for the day, for the night, stopping. And Nora was glad when his rain stopped dripping. They knocked on the window, they knocked on the door. I asked old Nora, can we take any more? And Nora cried out,